as we head to the business end of the ICC Men's T20 World Cup East Asia Pacific Sub-Regional Qualifier. The plot has thickened in Sano after the success over in Nagoya. All 9 teams in the competition have travelled to Sano, with the bottom 3 teams of teams falling out in the group stage playing a consolation tri-series, and the remaining 6 competing to finish winners of the tournament. And joining me again is Alan Kerr, the COO of the JCA. Fascinating tournament thus far. And as we record, 3 match days, 6 matches in Sano that, well, we think have a lot of significance. We're not quite sure what that significance actually is, but on the run home, it's Papua New Guinea who have done the early running.
Konnichiwa, Daniel. Yeah, it's a bit going on over here in Sano, isn't there? It was fun watching the guys down in Nagoya play their matches, and obviously managing our own games up here. But now we've got all 9 teams here. It's a lot packed into a small town. And so far, I think the cricket's delivering, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, neither of us were in Nagoya, but by all reports, everything went relatively well there, outside of 1 or 2 hitches that will easily be fixed up. And I know you were here too, but from a JCA point of view, and seeing that be the success it was, how encouraging is that for the JCA? And just to have that ticked off and knowing that it all went well, it just gives you a few less questions to answer once the Asian Games comes around.
Yeah, I was a bit gutted not to be down there, actually. I spoke to Adam Burse, who's now up here helping us out with the stuff in Sano, but Adam was saying how come the Asian Games proper will be a case of there'll be, hundreds of people catering for every little department, so the little gaps that there were for this tournament won't exist next time around, purely because of a human resourcing effort. So he'll just be able to enjoy actually running the tournament. And from a JCA point of view, I guess the biggest thing that we take away was the amount of interest there was in the cricket. Of course, we were always hoping to get crowds coming in for the Japan games, but I think for me, watching it from up here, I was probably most surprised by the amount of people that turned up on the Friday to watch the non-Japan games play. Like, there was 500-600 people, from what I'm told, down there watching other teams play, just looking to learn about cricket. So, I know that a few members of my staff have been spending quite a bit of time down in Nagoya promoting the sport, particularly in Nishin City, to try and get the local community interested. And I think that's obviously paid dividends because, 500-600 people for non-Japan games, and then upwards of 4 figures for when Japan did get into town is really, really encouraging. And hopefully that's a bit of a legacy in itself.
Yeah, need to give a shout to the EAP media team as well, who did a couple of really good pieces out there. I saw a nice moment with one of your players in Wataru Miyauchi and a couple of the young mascots and fans that were playing some cricket around. And I suppose just having that connection to a player, I think, is really significant. And when you move cricket to let's say a different part of Japan, for a lack of a better term, it can be extremely powerful. And as you said, having the hundreds of people that were there, and it bodes well for the Asian Games coming up light. But we'll stick to the competition that we are at the moment. And as we said, we are down to 6 teams. And it is Papua New Guinea who are currently undefeated. The format of the 9-team tournament, 3 groups of 3. The bottom teams of each group drop out, and then of the progressing teams, you carry the points and net run rate that you acquired against the other progressing teams. So it was important for your boys, Alan, to put a Japan cap on, that they got that win over Vanuatu to carry over those points and the extra net run rate boost. And it means that, as we said, we have PNG in first, 3 wins from 3, and then we've got 3 teams with 2 wins from 3, Samoa, Japan, and the Cook Islands, who got past Japan off the final ball in the afternoon game before the rest day on, what day was that? Thursday. I forget what day it is when you're in tournament mode. But one of the highlights of the tournament was Thomas Parima's unbeaten 48, which got the Cook Islands home. And as for the other two teams, Vanuatu and Indonesia, who are yet to play each other, one of them will taste at least one victory, assuming that the rain stays away, which it has done on the whole. I know we had that truncated Cook Islands Vanuatu game, which almost gave us a thrilling result in itself with the target coming in. I'll start, I suppose, with that Cook Islands win over Japan yesterday, and it is fresh in the memory, and I'm sure if you were to put your JCA hat on, it was probably a tough one to take, Alan. But in saying that, you have to hand it to a Cook Islands program who have built over the last few years. If anything, their positives and their strengths are probably more in their batting than their bowling, holding you guys to just 90 and then winning the game off the final ball. Thomas Prema's 48, not out. I said it with some recency bias, all things considered. I thought was one of the better EAP knocks I've seen possibly ever in terms of the context that it was in on a very tough pitch. The sixth match that we saw in 3 consecutive days of action on that strip. And yeah, it sets up a fascinating final 3 days of the tournament here.
Yeah, good for the Cook Islands. Well done them. No, look, they played really well yesterday. They were over here a year ago, played in the Tri Series with us in Thailand, which they finished third in, and then we played them in a couple more games after that, which we won both of those. And the improvement in their team from 12 months ago is very clear to see. I think where we highlighted it from watching the game yesterday, we just spoke about it over lunch, was their fielding. They moved really well. They took some excellent catches yesterday. There was a flare run out in the Vanuatu game as well. So those kind of things are really lifting them to a level that they probably weren't at 12 months ago and making them a much more competitive unit. I kind of said at the start of the tournament that I wouldn't be surprised if they pulled us a shock over someone. I was kind of hoping it wouldn't be us. But, it probably shouldn't be that much of a shock, actually, when you look at it. I know the rankings are a bit different, but we all know that ICC rankings leave a little bit to be desired. So I think the gaps between the teams aren't as big as the rankings would suggest. And you said in your pre-tournament piece, Daniel, that you felt this was probably one of the more open EAP tournaments that we've had in a long time. And again, we were chatting over lunch about the closeness between these teams, and it is still pretty open. The fact that you've got 3 teams on 4 points and PNG just with their noses in front on 6, with 2 more games to go for everyone, suggests that it's all to play for.
Papua New Guinea have done the early running, and as it's been well pointed out, the last couple of years have been tumultuous for the Barramundis and for the Lewas as well, with the number of players departing and some issues going on and disagreements going on between the board and the players. But they've come out here and played fairly well. They put up 200 plus over the Cook Islands, and you could probably look at maybe the Cookies bowling as the potential weak link out of the two, relatively speaking. But they came up to Sano and they had that final ball victory over Samoa, chasing down another tricky target, I should say, of 113. Tim McCaskill's taken the head coaching role, and he's a man that's had an excellent resume next to his name. He's been involved in Victoria cricket as well as Sri Lanka cricket as well. And my impression of them, having seen them a couple of times now here in Sano, is that they're probably the most together an 11 has been in a little while from a Papua New Guinea standpoint. You could tell in the warm-up that they're all together. We know the reputation of being excellent fielders and runners between wickets still rings true. Their fielding probably isn't at the level it was maybe 5 or 6 years ago, but on the slower pitches here, it can be a real point of difference to maybe work those 2s and potentially 3s around the ground, and it actually probably brings them takes them a little bit maybe further away from the chasing pack. We've seen Papua New Guinea a lot over the years, and hand on heart, they're probably not the strongest that they've ever been, but they've made a strong start here. Destiny is in their hands. Japan face them on the final day. They've got Vanuatu as well before that on the 17th. So they actually have a day off on the 16th and then matches 17th and 18th. Can they be stopped? And how do you stop a team like Papua New Guinea when, as we said, they've done the early running and they've just answered enough questions to remain unbeaten?
Well, I think you're right in that they do look more together than they have done. They do look a bit more like their old selves. We haven't seen them since the regional final in 2023, but they do look a bit more like they did back then. I guess the difference is they have perhaps lost that air of invincibility that they've had for the last, I don't know, 10, 12 years, as long as I've been involved in the AP cricket at least. And that probably came with what happened in Oman and the defeat to Samoa and going out early probably knocked a bit of their confidence. But I think Tim McCaskill and the team have started to bring that back. They were wobbly against Samoa in that low-scoring game, but they got over the line, and I think that's where experience and nous played a part. And even yesterday against Indonesia, actually, they were wobbling as well, but the experience of Asad Vala, he's dropped down the order now to number 5. You know, a guy like that coming in to just have some experience and keep things together made the world of difference, and picked up a few handy wickets as well because his bowling's pretty well suited to the Sano pitches. So I think for us, looking at that game at the end of the tournament, we've still got to play Samoa before then, but I think we'll go into it. We've been relishing the chance to play Papua New Guinea since 2023. They beat us pretty comfortably twice in those games, but I feel like we're a better unit now than we were then, and they perhaps aren't quite where they were. So, we remain confident that we can still, despite that setback yesterday, finish at the top of the tree. We've got to beat Samoa and Papua New Guinea, and then all being well, we'll actually finish to the top. So that's what, from a Japan point of view, we've got to aim at. We know these conditions better than anyone else does. We've seen that from a Japan point of view, we're perhaps not batting as well as we could, but it only takes a couple of guys to find a bit of form. And as we saw yesterday with the Cook Islands, Thomas Parima, one guy making a score is enough to actually get you over the line at the moment. So, low-scoring games, they are a bit more of a toss of a coin. But fingers crossed, we can get ourselves over the line. And I do think Papua New Guinea, whilst giving them the respect they deserve, I do think that they are beatable. So, yeah, this tournament remains very open.
I remember we had a chat in 2023 over a cold drink in the hotel in Papua New Guinea, and the question was put to me, how do we, and we being Japan, how do we beat Papua New Guinea? And I think I remember at the time saying that, look, I think if you play them in a 5-match series, even in 2023, you'd probably potentially be able to nick one game off them at least. And I think that number's probably increased over the years. There's the chance that you could win 2 or even 3 out of the 5 against that Barramundis team. And yeah, it would just come down to how good is the rhythm all the way by the last match day, where you'll potentially face a team like Papua New Guinea on a surface that might have played in a similar vein to that Cook Islands game, and maybe you can take, I suppose, the lessons from that particular experience into that game. And for Papua New Guinea, we talked about the Cooks. The Cooks have probably the strongest off air. We actually said top 5. The Cooks can actually lay claim to having the best top 5 in the group. But as you work down the order for Papua New Guinea, there's probably the inexperience of the guys in their early 20s that you can potentially expose in those middle overs. They were largely bailed out by Ale Now at number 9, I think it was, in that final ball thriller against Samoa. He's played at, I think it's 2 World Cups at least. He's definitely played 1 at least. A lot of these Barramundis players have that World Cup experience, and they can kind of bring it back, where by contrast, Samoa, Vanuatu, Indonesia, and the Cooks are still possibly in that kind of mode where you don't probably believe you're playing your best cricket yet, simply because of the development path that you and the other teams are potentially on.
Yeah, well, there has to be a point, doesn't there, where you stop learning and start doing. From a Japan point of view, I don't know if you guys covered it on the podcast, but we played a series against Bahrain and Thailand and someone else back in February. And again, Bhutan, and we only made 100 in the final of that game, and we had Bahrain, I don't know what it was, 50 for 7 or 50 for 8 or something, and they got over the line. It was very similar yesterday, in that we had Cook Islands 28 for 6 and 40 for 7, and we couldn't finish it off. So, that's where that experience that you mentioned, the Papua New Guinea, if they're in that position, they probably do finish those games off. And for us now, we've had a couple of those experiences. We need to be a bit more ruthless. We need to start finishing games off. When we get into winning positions, we need to capitalise. And I think that's, you learn in tournament play. Tournament play is where you have to try and put your learnings into action. And we play so little cricket, we get so few opportunities to put the players under pressure. We talked, I think, in our last pod about that being a part of what the JPL is. So for us to be able to have opportunities to do that in games, it's really valuable. And tournament play can be a lot about momentum. And at the moment, PNG have that. We've probably had ours checked a little bit. So now it's really a test of character, isn't it? And how from us we can bounce back. And I know Samoa as well will be keen to bounce back from their setback against Papua New Guinea. Their next game is going to be against us. So it's both teams coming off the back of a defeat now, and both teams fancying their chances of getting through and potentially winning this tournament. So that game on Saturday afternoon is shaping up to be a big one.
I'm glad you brought the Samoans up and wanted to segue into them. That's a heartbreaking defeat that they had against Papua New Guinea, but they're staying in the same hotel as I am, and I've got to say the vibe on the whole is pretty good from that group. I think they're more encouraged by that result rather than downcast. I think they know that they just got a couple of split-second decisions wrong and a couple of things that it didn't quite pan out the way that they would have liked. But yes, you say there's a point where you need to stop learning and start doing, but I think that's one of those games that they'll take a lot out of. Now, you beat Samoa in Oman twice.
One warm-up game.
Yeah, the warm-up. And then, so, I guess there's history there, and I'm sure they're chomping at the bit, but, the variables are a little bit different here. The teams are slightly different too. Samoa, an interesting one in that they were almost a victim of their own success from a batting point of view at the start of the tournament, where the top order fired and they didn't really get a chance to give much of the middle order a chance to bat. I can go through that lineup of the Samoan batters and just looking at their numbers over the course of the tournament, and the Sean Talias and Darius Vissers have had the chance to really make their mark at the tournament, and you need to give them their flowers. They've been excellent, and when one's been able to go and accelerate, the other one's held back and turned the strike over, and they've kind of gone with the hotter of the two players. And then it's been a little bit trickier underneath. Even someone like Ben Mailata has been able to knock the ball around a little bit, and you had a knock of note. I think it was 27 off 21 against Vanuatu and a 16 off 20 as well. But outside of that, Sean Cotter's barely had the chance to bat. He's been run out in the last over of a game, same as Salmoni Tia, Fariti Suloloto, even someone like Caleb Jasmat, who could come in as far as, say, 7 and 8. So there is a middle order there who can do a job. I think maybe one thing that Samoa have actually lamented, and this was actually talking to one of the Samoa players this morning, was that because they are bigger, they're focusing more on hitting the ball rather than working the twos and the threes, and they actually thought that was in their favour in Oman because the wicket was a little bit flatter and nicer to bat on. They think that here that it actually pushes Papua New Guinea out in front a little bit more because they are able to sort of manipulate the singles and twos. But if you were to look at a team like that, putting maybe your tactician's cap on here, Alan, from a Japan point of view, that as aggressive as Darius Visser is, he's likely to give you a chance and you just have to be ready to take that chance. How important is it? I know it's a dumb question, but to get, say, 2 quick ones in the power play and force them into answering a different question, because at the moment, plan A with the ball and with the bat for Samoa has, in general, outside of that narrow defeat to PNG, been enough for them.
Yeah, that is cricket, isn't it? Different conditions have such an impact on how you can play, and the best sides are able to adapt and overcome those problems. And that's certainly a test for all the teams here, I think. Even us being the home team, it's still hard to bat. It doesn't, just because we've played on it a bit more than anyone else doesn't mean we're any better at it, really. And we saw that yesterday. So I think that, you mentioned that they've been relying on their top order. We haven't been. Most of our guys have had a couple of opportunities with the bat. So that, I guess, in some ways that's helpful for us. But at the same time, we do need to be able to expose that middle order, as you mentioned. And we know from our own experience playing Samoa and Oman that they've got guys down the order who can hit absolute bombs and take 30 off and over, which they did against us, to bring a game right back into it. So you're never out the game when you're Samoa. And with T20 cricket, it's such a volatile format of the game. I think we spoke about this previously. And one big over, particularly in low-scoring games, can completely swing things. And Samoa have the players who can produce that one big over. Cook Islands have it too, and we saw that yesterday when Thomas Parima hit 3 boundaries in a row and really just grabbed momentum back and changed the way the game was going. And those small moments can define the games, and you've just got to make sure that you recognise when those moments are happening and seize the initiative back if you feel it's starting to move away from you. So it's going to be interesting to see who can do that over the next 3 days.
Yeah, it's worth just running through the remaining fixtures in this tournament and how teams can plot their way to chasing Papua New Guinea down. The one downside, I suppose, Samoa, Japan and Cook Islands have kind of eaten away at each other's points, and it's meant that Papua New Guinea has been able to get a win in front. Vanuatu and Indonesia yet to taste a Super 6 victory. They play each other on the 16th morning. So, I mean, there's a good chance by the time people listen to this, they'll actually have a result there. And one of them, hopefully, again, outside of rain, will get a win on the board. You guys play Samoa in the afternoon there. And then on May 17, the doubleheader, Cook Islands, Indonesia, PNG, Vanuatu. And then on the 18th of May, Cook Islands, Samoa in the morning. And then that fixture, Japan v Papua New Guinea, which could well decide the tournament. PNG, of course, will look to keep destiny in their own hands. We saw a little bit of Indonesia here. They were in the group in Sano, one of the 3 groups that were here in Sano. Of course, the other 2 in Nishin. So some were a little bit surprised by that win over the Philippines, but I think if we're honest with ourselves, with the sheer amount of cricket that the Indonesia team have been able to play, and then by contrast, the situation in the Philippines where things, I think we can safely say and safely assess that the things in the Philippines from a cricketing point of view haven't been perfect in terms of their preparation, in terms of their setup. But what have you made of the Indonesians? Guys haven't come across each other a terrible lot. I know it's sub-regionals, you've faced them as well. What have you kind of seen in the last 4 years that's different about them now that they've played over 100 matches since the start of 2023?
Yeah, well, we always looked at Indonesia as a team that's quite hard to beat. They don't bowl all the wides. They feel pretty well. They take the catches. I guess they're lacking the hitters, which isn't dissimilar for us, really. They've got a couple of new faces in the team now who look like they can go pretty hard. But I think the rest of this tournament's looking like a struggle for them now because they've lost 2 of their better batters to injury or unavailability for whatever reason. But, they're a work in progress, and I think they'll keep getting better. It's such a populous country. They're doing so much to develop cricket there. And I think once they get their new ground, they'll be able to play on turf a lot more. And I think that will definitely help them because all of their domestic cricket and all of their home internationals are played on synthetics. So playing a bit on the grass wickets, I'm sure will improve their techniques and will help them travel better, which I think has always been a bit of their struggle. They've got a pretty good home record from what I understand. But I think that, they're a country that deserve their place in the Super 6 of this format, but their next challenge will be to make that step into the top 3-4. But it's like with all of us, it's incremental improvement and trying to see what the next step is, and I think everyone's still fighting for that a bit.
Yeah, they were unfortunate. They lost Gamantika to that finger injury while he was in the field, and he would have been a great addition to that batting lineup against Papua New Guinea, where they just ran out of steam chasing 130-ish. He had the ability and actually was player of the match, I think, in that first match that Indonesia had that win over the Philippines, where he made 45 of 33 and then took 2 for 17 with the ball. So, you take that out of any team and it's going to be difficult. A quick one on Vanuatu. It's been a pretty tricky campaign. They got off to a really good start. Probably their best performance unfairly for them, has probably been against the weakest team in the competition that they've met, obviously, in Fiji, who were bundled out in the group stage. And I know, speaking to Tim, he was really happy how that first game panned out. It wasn't the same when they played against Japan and they couldn't chase a score in the 120s. But that scorecard and that team looks stronger with Patrick Matatava back. They've just been unable to piece together an ideal batting performance, and they're probably 4 overs of spin, maybe short of being a more competitive side. They're a side that are probably now desperate for a bit of an introduction of youth. I know Junior Kautapau's still in his mid-20s, and he's actually shown the blueprint, I think, of what a good middle order batter in Sano can be. was really busy in that game against Samoa. I think he made 37 not out off 23 balls and didn't do it with too much fuss. But I think by their own admission, they haven't been at their best. I get a feeling that they're struggling a little bit in terms of injury. I know Tim himself was dealing with a niggle of his own, and the guys aren't probably as fit as they were 3 or 4 years ago when they were challenging Papua New Guinea a little bit more at this level. They play Indonesia, might put them just ahead as favourites in that match, and maybe it spurs them on. They'll certainly be up for the Papua New Guinea fight, knowing that they're the best team in the region. But yeah, I suppose to frame it for you, Alan, when you get put in that spot and you do lose a couple of early matches in the Super Sixes, how hard can it be to kind of regroup and to find that winning formula when you're sort of in a habit of losing? Irrespective of your ability, you're finding it hard to piece together a plan or a semblance of a plan to win a game of cricket.
Yeah, I think for both those teams at this point, it's almost impossible. It probably is mathematically impossible for them to finish top 2. So I think they have to look at what wins they can get from the tournament from here, and whether that's individual performances, whether that's blooding some younger players, giving some guys opportunities in positions they might not be familiar with. I think you've got to look for some small wins. Obviously, getting a win will be the priority for them both, but they both still got a game after that. So what can they take away from the tournament at this point? It's got to be looking at what positives they can from this stage. They'll have some positives already, and it's focusing on those rather than looking at the fact that they're 3 games into the Super Sixes without a win. They need to put that to one side and just say, right, okay, what does success look like from here? And whatever they define that to be, they can chase those goals.
Yeah, I think for Vanuatu, these conditions are probably not the ideal conditions for them necessarily. I know they're a team that don't work a lot of 2s and 3s, and they're more reliant on that powerful top order, but we've seen the success of Joshua Raz, who's had 2 player of the match performances. He's been vital with bat and ball, and the addition of Nick Venables as an extra bowling option has helped them a little bit. And yeah, as we said, Junior Kautapau has been pretty good as well. I think that's just about it, Alan, unless you've got anything more to add. I think an exciting 3 days of cricket ahead of us, and we'll leave the listeners, I think, to ponder who will go out and win the tournament. Any final thoughts?
No, it's been a pleasure, Daniel. And I think just to add, you've mentioned the weather a couple of times. The weather forecast is good. I'm not expecting us to lose any cricket. So touching wood here, fingers crossed we get it all completed in full matches over the next 3 days.
Yeah, and of course there'll be coverage across emerging cricket as well as the Japan Cricket Podcast as we co-sanction this one again, a collaborative effort. And a huge shout out needs to go to everyone here at not only the JCA, Alan, so a pat on the back for yourself, but also the team at ICC EAP who have put on a great tournament thus far. With all the other factors going against them, they've been able to pull through and put on a great show. So looking forward to the final 3 days. Keep up to date with everything at emergingcricket.com. And of course, all the action is live and free on ICC TV in Sano. Hope to see you tune in, and hopefully we'll have plenty to talk about in 3 match days' time.